This is the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast, and we're here to build autonomous athletes and put phenomenal programming into every garage, basement, and spare bedroom out there. I'm Jerred Moon, and I'm with Joe Courtney. We are strength and conditioning coaches who have turned over 20,000 people into garage gym athletes over the last decade. And we're here to reduce the information overload that exists in the health and fitness industry today. We're going to do that by covering relevant science and give actionable takeaways, not only from the data, but from our years of experience. So let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
How you doing, man?
Doing great. Before we get into anything else, why are you here today, dear listener? We're going to be talking about partial squats versus full squats.
You're asking me for a second.
Nope, I'm not asking
why
you.
Am I here today?
Let's go existential, shall we? So partial squats versus full squats. I've been doing a lot of partial squats. I've gotten some questions about it in the time I post on social of me doing like a box squat or a partial. And I figured we could talk about it. I also dove into a lot more of the science and research behind it. And it's not a topic that I had honestly gone very deep on until recently. And so I want to talk about the placement of both and why you might want to start incorporating both and why we will probably start incorporating more into garage gym athlete training. So if you want to hear more about partial squats versus full squats, we'll be going kind of narrow on that topic today. Before we do, Joe, how's life? How's training?
So before I go into my one training note to share, I got to ask, because it's relevant right now, especially for you in Texas. How often do you have electrolytes, and do you ever double up on them in the same day?
Yeah. So I wake up every single morning and have an element. So that is, 1,000 milligrams of salt right off the bat. I always have that. I mean, I have that basically year round. Whether or not its element can change, I'm not specific to a brand of electrolytes. There are actually a couple other brands I'm looking to try right now too. So no brand loyalty there, but then it depends on what happens the rest of the day. If I'm doing the sauna, for sure going to be having more electrolytes than just the one element. And then if I'm training, sometimes it's training outside, being outside, and also the sauna. Like a good, for instance, was yesterday. Yesterday was, I trained in the middle of the day, which I don't normally do. But I did like sled pushes and sled pulls. And the only real place I could do that is outside my driveway. Had to do it in the afternoon. So it's like, whatever, it's 100 degrees, super hot, super sweaty. Then I sat at my son's football practice outside, close to 100 degrees, probably 97, 98 for 2 hours. And I also did the sauna. So that's a lot of sweating in a day. That's a lot of electrolyte loss. So on that day, I'll have quite a bit. But I also pay attention to my diet, kind of to that point. Like when I'm home and I'm only eating clean, I'm not getting a lot of sodium. Like if I'm having a shake and I'm having Emily buys these meals for our lunches, and then our dinners are pretty healthy. Like we're just not getting a lot of sodium. So I also pay attention to that. So kind of a long-winded response, but yeah, I will double up. I don't normally ever do 2 elements in a day, to answer your question though. I normally do like an element in the morning and then noon in the afternoon or evening if I'm going to have an additional electrolyte supplement.
That's usually like mostly reserved to summer, and winter you're sort of less likely to have some.
Yeah, winter I would have probably an element in the morning, or like a noon in the morning, something with a little bit less salt, and then probably some more if I had like a sauna session. But if you think about it, like an element's 1,000 milligrams of salt, right? A noon is like 300. So in the winter, I kind of switch more to that. So I might have 300 additional milligrams of salt in the morning. And then if I do a sauna session in the evening, another 300 for, 600 total for the day, which still I could probably have more, but I just don't feel like I'll need it. I'm not sweating as much in the wintertime.
Yeah. So pretty much just in the summer. And it always changes depending on where we live, because Monterey, I didn't need electrolytes almost at all for at least first thing in the morning. But here it's muggy, it's hot. I mean, it doesn't cool down. It's like 74 in the morning, and then it gets around 80 or in the 80s in the afternoon. Our basement's always around 80 with 80% humidity. So I'm sweating in the gym. So in the first thing in the morning, I've switched to electrolytes right away with my coffee, and sometimes I'll have a little something to break my fast. Most likely in the summer, because I'm having electrolytes, I won't work out fasted because I've tried that a few times, and it just there's a couple times. I mean, usually if it's just strength, it's fine, but there's a few times where it didn't go super well. But in the winter is sort of like the season where I will work out fasted. So it's kind of like, and I didn't even realize that till recently of how fast we were going through electrolytes. And there are days where I will double up. Usually it's only the days, like you said, when you're sweating a lot. It'll be the days that I go play golf because I'm playing golf in the afternoon. I'm outside for like 2 or 3 hours in the sun. So yeah, summer is I do liquid IV, but we also have a few other brands that we kind of swap around with. And they're about 800 milligrams. Some of them are get like six between 6 and 800. Food wise, I'll put a little bit of salt on my food, but it's not like a whole lot of salt in my food, especially because I cook everything that we make.
Yeah. I'm crazy about electrolytes with my kids. Uh, Probably more than most parents. One, I don't let
Yeah,
my kids touch Prime. This might be a heavily debated topic, but like a lot of the kids these
that's
days, they're
so sweet.
drinking Prime. I don't let my kids touch that. Typically, only Noon or Element. But with how much they sweat and how much physical activity they're doing outside, I don't want them to have water only, especially with how uh, prominent heat stress is or can be around this time in Texas for sports like football and soccer. So they're always having electrolytes too. It's something I've really taught my kids about hydration and something to think about. And then same for them. Once they transition, we kind of get out of this hot wintry months. Um, they won't have electrolytes. They'll just have water. And we use liquid IV with them if they're like in a sports game or something because it has a decent amount of sugar. My kids don't drink Gatorade, Powerade, Prime. They don't drink any of those kind of things. They only will have those.
Yeah, I saw the liquid IV has kids liquid IV. We've gotten the Pedialyte for kids, and Landon, we always have one of his just around. He'll sip at it. He won't like drink a ton of it, but he'll still have it every once in a while. I'd be interested in I did look at the sodium on the kids liquid IV. It's a little bit less sodium, which is pretty good. I'll only have like a Gatorade Zero if I need to, like if I'm out, because it's still like zero sugar. It's still not as much. But yeah, those primes, I got one time, and holy cow, I almost couldn't finish it.
Yeah, I saw something. I didn't look too much into it. Just not a huge fan of the dude who started Prime, and I'm kind of
Mm.
I'm not gonna support brands I'm not a huge fan of. But then I saw some report about the amount of plastics in them. Like there's a
Mm.
lot of I don't know if I did not review this, but I didn't care because my kids already weren't drinking Prime, so it's not like this made my decision. I was like, we're just not going to drink Prime. We can have Noon or something or Liquid IV or something like that. But there was like more plastics in one bottle of Prime than you're supposed to have for your lifetime allotment of like PFAs or whatever.
Wow.
I don't know if that's still true, but and again, I'm trying not to spread misinformation. Everyone do their own research. That was just something I heard. I don't know if it's true or not. But I honestly I try to stay away from all of those kind of drinks for that reason. I don't trust any companies. Like I just like super skeptical. Like, I don't trust Gatorade. I don't trust Prime. Only kind of trust these electrolyte companies, but I don't really trust them. It's just like it's a convenience factor, right?
Yep.
I'd prefer to do Himalayan pink salt and lemon in my water. That's what I used to do for a long time, but it's just that's a little extra amount of work, so that the element can make it a little bit easier. But I also have done that in the past a lot. Himalayan pink salt and like half a lemon.
Yeah. It's funny. Whenever I go to like pack for a trip, I go to like as I'm packing, I open up all the pockets and put stuff in, and I always find like stray packets of electrolytes. They're just stashed
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, they're good.
Um, but anyway, training. So one thing that I've been doing that I did last week, and I've been meaning to do more of, especially with my heel issues, and it's just good to do. And I think you have a story of doing it because of I think shin splits, and that is barefoot running.
Hmm.
I'll go to the turf field and I'll do like calisthenics agility drills, but barefoot. And
Yeah,
like forward running, backwards running, sideways, karaoke, skipping, all those things, different planes of movement, but barefoot. And I did like 30 minutes of drills last week, nothing like super intense, but I was doing agility drills for 30 minutes barefoot. And I was kind of sore for the next couple of days around my ankles, around like the outsides of my calves, the outsides of my hips, just different areas that it normally isn't. So Um, just I really enjoy doing it. I think it's really good for everybody to do every once in a while. And I remember I did it years ago, and it felt pretty good for my Achilles when I was having really sore Achilles as well.
Yeah, that's how I like permanently fixed shin splints. Such a crazy thing. Like I ran track in high school, but I was a sprinter, and but anytime I'd run longer distance, I would get shin splints, and that just carried into I did ROTC in college, and we're having to run a lot more there, and I'd always get shin splints. And I talked to he was on the cross country team at Texas Tech University. This guy was like, and he was an ROTC, and he was like a 4 minute miler. I think he ran like a 4:15 or something like that. Just like a crazy fast guy. Could run all day for cross country stuff. And he just like mentioned it in passing. I wasn't even like I mentioned I had really bad shin splints or something, and he was an upperclassman, and he was just like, he's like, you should try. It was two things. It's like you should try barefoot running and backwards running, and I was like, okay. And like I didn't get any programming or like prescription or anything. I just started doing those things, kind of the same format that you were doing them, and I have never had shin splints since. I don't do those things anymore. I like trained that way for a while, and then I just never got shin splints again. So I don't know if it was like helped me with my running form, because like you can't heel strike when you're barefoot. You just can't. Like you'll realize, oh wow, that hurts. So I don't know if it's fixed my running form or if it strengthened the muscles to where I don't get shin splints anymore. But yeah, I've never had shin splints since the beginning of college there when I got that little tidbit.
Yeah, so I recommend people trying it out, especially if you're having any sort of lower extremity issues or just need to change it up. And there's a lot of science between which we might do a podcast on at some point, backwards running and the benefits of that. Anyway.
Yeah. For me, training wise, I've been doing some sled pushing and pulling that I mentioned, which has been fun. That M1 tank is in full use. Pretty good little machine. I don't have any complaints so far. Other than like it's definitely different than like having a load. You know what I mean? Like just throwing 300 pounds on a sled and pushing it or whatever. It's different. Like not saying it's bad different, but it's different. It's not the same. It's more like if it's like an airdyne, right? Like the harder you go on an airdyne, the more wind resistance you get, the harder it becomes. That it's very similar. It's obviously like it's kind of the same technology. It's just not wind powered, and so you can almost like use that to your advantage, right? I mean, if you go slower or faster. So if I wish I had like a power chart, like as I'm pushing it, of like, or like how many pounds it would be equivalent to throughout the entire thing. And I think there's a little bit of inconsistency there, but I don't care. I don't really care that much, because what I do know is after I do like a really hard 50-yard push, my legs are burning and they're full of blood, and that's all I'm trying to get to, right? So like at the end of the day, it's effective, but it's definitely different than a normal sled.
I will say, when doing sled pushes in the past, that first couple of pushes, that first two steps is usually the hardest to get it going. So with that initial push is like, you always think, holy crap, I can't get this going. But once it's started, you know you don't want to stop. So you may not get the point of like, I don't know how to specifically get the weight moving. But usually the hardest part is, okay, I just need to keep this thing moving. So doing that, like, that's basically what you do. I guess it would be the power endurance aspect of it, not the initial power of it. So once you keep that momentum going, you just want to keep it going.
Yeah, and that's and another thing I've noticed. They had to pour my driveway separately. I won't get into that whole story, but like, it's a little bit rougher concrete for most of the driveway. Not real rough concrete, just rougher. And then it's like super smooth in front of the garages. You can't tell that they're any different. They look the exact same. It's just how they poured them. And I can almost, because the concrete's so smooth, I don't know, like the wheels just like glide across it. It's like there's no resistance. And then the second I get on that normal concrete, it's like, oh, it just like stops right in place. So that's another kind of weird thing about it. But again, very specific to my front yard.
Yeah, looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll get you on there. Second you come out here, but let's dive into some lower body training. I was Joe and I were kind of talking before the podcast. I had some back issues a year or two ago, and it was pretty bad, like the worst injury I've had, like the longest sustained injury to where I couldn't like really do things. And even now I'm like being really careful. I've talked about these things. Even though I'm fine, I'm back. I've done heavy squats. It's everything seems to be fine. The only thing I'm avoiding really is like just I'm not really trying to max out my back squat anymore. And I don't know if I will. I did that. I chased that for a long time, tried to get really big numbers, sustained really big numbers for a long time. And now I'm just not as interested because I'm like, where's the threshold here? What's the cutoff? And so I've done a lot of partial squats, and I'll post things like that on Instagram, my training. Either it's my programming will say, hey, I'm doing partial squats today, or people see me doing like a box squat or a high box squat and they'll ask me what's going on. And part of it is, I'm trying to avoid full depth just to save my lower back a little bit. I do a lot of belt squats as well. But I started doing more research on partial squats because what got me really interested on partial squats, because it's not a big thing that I have programmed. And Joe, you can probably agree with this, but like, and I don't know where this comes. Maybe it's the early days of like the Globo Gym guys not going low enough, right? It's almost like you want to make fun of that person, so you don't want to be that person. So we want to do full depth squats, right? Because there's a lot of benefit to full depth squats. And so I've avoided partial squats. For so long because I didn't want to be that guy. But partial squats, because you don't have the mobility or the strength to go low, is different than programming partial squats to get an increased benefit on purpose. But two very different things. I can go low, I can go heavy. I'm not doing partial squats because I'm trying to like impress some girl in the gym with a lot of weight on the bar. Like I'm not that level, but I started looking more into partial squats, and here's why: because if you do partial squats, or you'll realize this with like higher box squats, you can move a lot of weight. Like I've done over 500 pounds on the bar for box squats for reps, but I can't do that right with a full depth squat with no box. I'm talking about a high box, like a 30-inch box. So these are very partial 500 pounds. But think about it. That's a huge weight. That's a huge stimulus, right? And you're also be able to maintain that explosiveness. And I've noticed that recently as I was loading up the bar, I was like, I'm going to do higher partials today. And when I was going heavy, I was like, okay, let's put on like 315, and that felt like nothing. And I was like, okay, let's go to 350. And I was like, I'm gonna have to go up. So I went to 405, and I'm not throwing around numbers to like try and impress anybody. I'm just saying since it was such a high partial, I'm talking like quarter squats. You're obviously a lot stronger in that range of motion, a lot stronger than that lower range of motion. And so I just started looking to this a lot more because I'm like, there's got to be more benefit here. And we're going to get into what some of those benefits are. But what are your opinions here, Joe? Like of just kind of this idea of squat depth.
I've never really thought about doing partial or less than like quarter squats or anything like that, just because I never had to really look into the benefit of it. If I had an issue for going through depth or for something like that, I'd probably do something else other than squatting in general. Like I've had some hip issues to where I've had to avoid squatting. So I might either deadlift, or I might just do something either lighter or lunges or something else to strengthen. But I've never thought about doing partials. But when I started looking into it, I can see why it would have some benefit. And I'm sure you're going to lay out, a lot more than I had come up with. But there's definitely like all the different forms and ways to do squats, bar positions, feet positions, all that stuff, which we can get into as well, have their benefits. So I'm sure that this has its place. But just like with a lot of things, I think it might even be like what we found with trap bar deadlift a long time ago.
Yeah.
That it doesn't replace the barbell deadlift, but they found that it was great for training dynamically and being explosive.
I think that's a great parallel there. So if anyone's wondering what he's talking about, we did look at a previous study on the trap bar deadlift. And trap bar is very similar to a partial squat because you don't have to go as low to do a trap bar deadlift. So there's a lot more quad involvement and there's a lot more speed. And, quick quiz, Joe. Like, what have I been saying for years? The missing element in most strength programs.
Power
Yeah,
or
power,
speed.
which comes from speed. And most people don't train that. And so trap bar deadlift, which is basically, if we had to call it something, is a partial deadlift. And then same with partial squats. And I feel like this is just something I completely missed because I'm not programming at a garage gym athlete. And I still have to think of like, how am I going to do this with also keeping people safe? Because part of it is you have to go heavier, right? Like you should go heavier, not on your first set, like get used to them. But just to lay this out for people, we can get to more of the science and like ways this applies and where it'd be applicable based off of what your goals are. But anyone listening, if you have a chance today, go. You don't even have to actually jump. Go act like you're going to run and jump and touch something. Like you're shooting for a 10-foot rim touch on a basketball goal or 8-foot, whatever. Like just get down to the position to jump and then don't jump. Just look at how much you bent. Look at your knee angle and just kind of pause there because here's what I know to be true. If you want to jump higher, you don't go lower. You don't go. I mean, maybe you do when you're 6 years old and you don't know how the body works, but going lower on jumping is actually going to make you jump worse. Like if you're squatting all the way down to jump, that's not going to work. So what you're probably going to find is you're doing about a quarter squat. If I had to guess, most people, and this is getting your maximum jump potential, you're doing about a quarter squat. And that's maybe a little bit more, but that's all you need. If you watch any of these athletes doing the vertical jump, where they jump and touch as high as they can, right? If you watch any of those videos in slow motion, that's exactly what you see. Quarter squat. I mean, I don't even think you'll see a half squat. Maybe a half squat in a really powerful athlete, but you're not seeing these full depth all the way down squats, and that's because you don't need to go all the way down. Like your body is incredibly powerful and explosive in that top range of motion, and this is
So I
why.
actually
Oh, go ahead.
I had a study that is exactly that, and it was called "The Effect of Squat Depth on Performance and Biomechanical Parameters of Counter Movement Vertical Jump." They had collegiate basketball and volleyball players, and I just pulled out one sentence. It was found that the greatest heights were obtained in jumps performed from higher squat depth. So they looked at above 90-degree squat depth and below 90-degree squat depth, and the higher jumps for those athletes were above 90 degrees. So more power was being generated up.
Yeah, and I think if that's just like kind of natural. Like if you see it, like, and the reason I make the 6-year-old joke is because I don't have to explain that to my kids now, but when they were younger and they were trying to jump, they thought, oh, okay, I got to get really low and I'm going to try really hard. And that never works. And it won't work as you're an adult or trying to be more athletic either. So whether you're applying this information to yourself or to your kids, if you want to be more athletic and explosive, which I think that should be a part of your training forever. I don't think it should be something that's like, I'm too old to train that way. I think stopping that type of training is what leads you to aging faster. This is kind of one of my opinions that I've developed is like, once you start losing speed and power, things are going to start going downhill. Like if all you're doing is hypertrophy, that's why I love bodybuilding. I love how safe it is. I mean, it's boring as all get out, but like I like the modality. There's not a lot of cons to this hypertrophy style bodybuilding training, but to me, there's got to be some sort of power based element. And then all I'm thinking of like, how can I keep power, speed, velocity training in as I age without getting hurt? That's the main thing, without getting hurt. And so when we look at these things, the partial squat really comes into play. So let's move to like the full depth squat for a minute, because the full depth squat it's like the king of all movements, right? Like no one will really disagree with that. And I'm not here to say you shouldn't be doing full depth squats, but at how much and like at what cost? Like I said, it's hurt me. It's hurt any power lifter who's done them for long duration. Like I don't know if the human body is actually designed to squat with your ass all the way down to your heels or close with hundreds of pounds on your back, and then to reverse that and come out while I think mechanically we can do that, I don't know if that's what the human body was designed for from a loading perspective. I think loading the spine that heavy and going that low for decades will cause problems. Right? It's going to cause lower back problems. It's going to cause pelvic floor issues. It's going to cause probably just core in general like issues if you're not training that way specifically. So I do think while the back squat is king and it has a place in your program, it shouldn't be heavily loaded on the spine in perpetuity. And as you can tell, that's probably where my training is going these days as I get older. Is like I'm trying to find how do I still do the things that I enjoy, maintain who I want to be athletically, but without hurting myself. And I think the full depth back squat is coming into question for me. It's like where does this serve in my training? Where does this serve in my programming? How does it help me?
And you're specifically referring to like high weight, 90+%, 1 to 3 rep max, or like 1 to 3 rep range efforts, like super high weights, not like lower loads, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I'm talking about heavily loaded because if we're talking about an air squat, if you're doing an air squat, there's no reason on earth you should be doing a partial, like at all. If you're doing an air squat, at least 90 degrees or lower, 100% of the time. And then as you load the barbell, yeah, we can go, if we're doing sets of 10 or 15, sure, get the depth. Because all that really happens when you go lower is, and you'll feel this if you haven't done it, is like you're starting to engage your glutes and your hamstrings more once you kind of get to that parallel or below. It's like those are the muscles that kind of have to get you out of the hole because the quads can't do it anymore. And then the quads pick up in the higher range of motion, and that's why you can handle these heavier loads. And this is kind of the idea behind Louis Simmons. He's really big on accommodating resistance. And so accommodating resistance is, we know that human beings are stronger in different depths of a movement. So in the bottom of the squat, you are the weakest. That is the weakest part that you are. And so what Louis Simmons did, again, he's a power lifter. So all he cares about is getting people to go all the way down as far as they need to and then come all the way back up. So he would do things like bands or chains. So just the chains example, when the chains are on the ground, it's the lightest, right? And so you're squatted all the way down. The chains are hanging from the barbell. That's the lightest. Then every inch you move up, another link comes off the ground and adds to the weight. And so by the time you're up, to that quarter squat position or half squat position, you may have added 20, 30 pounds to this squat, but your body can handle it. And so what his idea was is like, I want to train strength all the way through the different ranges of motion. But again, moving away from like, okay, Louis Simmons already knew that. How do we apply that? Because we're not trying to be professional powerlifters or the strongest human beings in the world. And that's all Louis Simmons optimized for and trained for. And I think a way that we can do that is partial squats for sure.
Yeah, I think we talked about, I think it may have been earlier this year, and how the importance of strength endurance might be better than absolute strength. Like training strength endurance, making that a priority. I do like to do a heavy squat every once in a while, but even in programming, we might only do above 90% twice a year or something.
Yeah.
And we've talked about way in the past about, because we do fit week every 12 weeks, or every 12 weeks cycle. And, I've never maxed out more than twice in a year. Never. And usually sometimes I might work up to a heavy one just because like I feel like doing that heavy one is fine. And it's not like a ton of a huge load. It's like I'm warming up to that one. I do the 1 or 2 and then that's it. I'm never sore afterwards because I'm not doing a huge load, but I'm not doing multiple sets of 90+%. So we've sort of fallen into that without ever like actually laying it out like this, and doing that, prioritizing more to the strength endurance, I think is better, is definitely what I'm thinking of more in the long run, even though it doesn't, everybody likes to pile on the weight on the bar, but I think strength endurance is best in the long run. And it even has, so many benefits to it.
Yeah. And no doubt, like heavy load training, there's a benefit to there, but there's also a cost. There's always like a risk associated with these things. So let's talk about getting into like programming this or how you'd want to do it. Because Joe, when I first asked you at the beginning, you were kind of like, I never really thought about doing partial squats. I would rather like find a different way to train that modality, keep the full squats, and then like train something else, right? Like through a lunge or like a whatever. And my mind has been thinking about it recently. How do I do the opposite? So if all I want to do are heavy partials, what is that costing me? Like, what am I not getting now if I'm not going low? And like I mentioned, I'm not working out the glutes and the hamstrings as much. That's all I'm really missing. I'm also not putting as much pressure on my lower back or pelvic floor. And so what do I need to do to train those areas? Well, I talked about I'm doing a lot more Nordic curls. Like, I just need to find ways to train my hamstrings and my glutes. So adding lunges, adding Nordic curls, deadlifts, those kind of things to make sure that I'm still training those areas, because I don't want to add more partial squats at the cost of not doing something right. That's how you become that gym bro who skips leg day and all these other things. So that's my caveat, is if you're going to start doing partial squats, still get some full squats in, but at the same time, you might need to be doing some additional accessory work to make sure you're getting the hamstrings and the glutes activated and worked. Now, getting into partial squats,
Actually, one
yeah,
one
go
thing
ahead.
on that, because it actually perfectly works into it, which we didn't even plan. So I have another study that I found, and specifically geared toward runners as well. So there's one, they said it's called "The Effect of Squat Depth on Multi-Articular Muscle Activation in Collegiate Cross-Country Runners." They had 20 D1 athletes using a 10 rep max weight compared to comparing half and full squat. The parallel or farther squats may help runners to train muscles vital for uphill running and correct posture while preventing injury by using lighter weights through a larger range of motion. Runners have different hamstring to quad ratio. So they found that they were much more quad dominant, but training the larger, fuller range of motion at lighter weights helped them activate their posterior chain, their quads, and then their glutes to better make them runners and safer.
Yeah, man, I think running is it's such an interesting thing. It's like, it's so good for you, but it's so bad for you in like a lot of ways. Like, more good than bad. But I'm saying, if you don't counteract all the things that running can do through good strength training, full depth squats, whatever, mobility, like, I've just seen such broken runners. Like, people who are like truly runners, that's all they do is run and they do nothing else. They don't stretch, they don't do mobility, they don't touch strength. They're so broken, like, and that's fine. I'm not you do you, but running it's just as bad as like the extremes of like powerlifting, right? Those people hurting themselves.
Yep.
But getting into partial squats, why would you use them? Okay, so we've hit on it, but I just want to be very clear. You would want to do partial squats if you're looking to maintain or develop power, speed, athleticism, jumping power, sprint speed, those kind of things. So if you're looking to be faster, more athletic, and powerful, which I think, again, things I want to maintain, and also things I'll eventually want to train my kids on as they develop more into athletics at later ages. These are things that I want for them without having to just be like, yeah, do a full depth squat all the time. Like, there are ways to program these things. So if you're looking for more athletic, power-based strength, that's where you might want to throw in partial squats. So that's the why. Now, getting into them, how would I program or utilize them, and how do I even do it now? Well, you can start with a simple box squat. And I recommend a box squat at 90 degrees or higher. So if you don't need a specific box for this. I mean, you can use a plyometric box. You can use your bench. You can add, like, if you have additional like rubber mats or anything that you can sit on to like raise it, like, it's pretty easy to get, like to get depth. And most of the time you don't need to sit on the thing. Like, and that's what some people do when they're doing box squats, is like, there's a time and place for that, but when you're doing partials, you don't need to like sit and fully relax your muscles and then rock forward and stand up. That's how some people do box squats. Again, time and place. But if we're looking to do partial squats, all the depth under you is just to make sure you're hitting the same depth every time, and it's a cue to stand back up. So I was doing quarter partials the other day, and that's, again, where I was like just able to throw a ton of weight on there. And what I used was my bench, but then under my bench, I have my daughter has these gymnastic mats. So gymnastic mats under the bench. So the bench is actually tilted like at like 45 degrees. Like, it's like aggressively tilted. It's not something I could sit on because these are mats. It would just push. And all I was doing is it was a cue. The second my butt and kind of hamstrings touched that, I was shooting back up. It wasn't a place that I was sitting down. So just understanding how to utilize that. And you'll realize after you do a couple of these, I recommend doing 2 to 3 reps at a time before you get into anything more aggressive, and realize how much power you have. Like you'll realize like, wow, I can just shoot back up. And it feels like jumping, but it's jumping with a load. And this is so beneficial. So that's how I recommend getting started. Like start with these different loads. Don't sit down all the way. Don't unload the spine, and just work through different range of motions and try which one feels the best. I personally like, going to about, um, a quarter squat to half, like a half not being 90 degrees. That would be more full squat. So in between, like 45 degrees between those two, right? So it'd be like half or full or standing up, then it would be a quarter squat, then a half squat, and then all the way down. Like I don't feel like there's a great benefit in the 3/4 squat before 90 degrees. I don't see a lot of benefit there. Might as well go all the way down. But in the other two, the half and the quarter squat, I feel like those are really beneficial for developing speed and power.
That is definitely sounds interesting. It's I definitely want to try it out, especially because I miss doing power cleans, and I feel like I'm missing that weighted heavy power. Like I can do kettlebell swings, and it's great,
Can
but I
you
can't
not
do
do
power
power
cleans right
cleans
now.
because of your shoulder? Is that
It's mostly
what
my wrist. My
wrist?
shoulder's
Okay.
getting better, but yeah, I can't really catch anything in the front rack right now because of that, and I haven't been able to do that power cleans for like a year or two, over a year. So I might need to do these just to feel that heavy power again.
Yeah, I think they're so beneficial. And like I said, I want to start programming a garage gym athlete. So if you're like listening to this as one of our athletes, don't worry, it's coming. Probably in the next cycle, I'll throw it in there. Um, I want to make sure people are getting introduced to these, and it's mainly for the athleticism portion. And this is not new stuff. Like I pulled a bunch of stuff. There are books written on like different squat depths. Franz Bosch, Cal Dietz, triphasic training, science and practice of strength by Zadarowski. All like the core strength textbooks where they talk about athleticism, speed, power development. They talk about utilizing multiple squat depths for different purposes, right? But if you're like me and you come from more of like a powerlifting background, it's like the full depth squat is king, and it's almost like a mindset issue. Like I had to like get through and see a lot of the science, and then also see some of the benefits from it, and be like, okay, wow, this is something that I really need to throw into my training more often.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see what it's going to look like on paper as far as and on the programming goes.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll say, if you are trying to program these on your own, power based stuff, you can typically rest longer in duration because we're not trying to do anything other than the speed itself, right? So we're not trying to fatigue a muscle like if we were doing hypertrophy based training. If we're trying to build muscle, like there's all this like, oh, should I rest 90 seconds or whatever? When you're doing power based training, it's actually better to rest a little bit longer. That way, every time you do a set, you can go full power explosive. Because if I was to go like, okay, I'm doing sets of 5 with partials, quarter squats, really heavy, and then I rest 30 seconds, I'm going again, and I'm getting tired. I'm just getting tired to where one, my form is breaking down, or I'm not generating power anymore. I'm starting to slow down. You're starting to lose some of the benefit there. So I won't say that there's an optimal rest time, but if you notice it's getting too hard for you, you either need to lighten the load or rest more. That way you can generate as much speed and power as you can. Speed and power training is a little bit different than your traditional strength training or hypertrophy based training. You want to have a little bit more rest, a little bit more in the tank. And even when we talk about speed training, you shouldn't get fatigued, right? That's the thing I always have to try and teach people on dynamic effort training. It's like, wait, we're doing 2 reps. It's like, yeah, we're doing 10 sets of 2 reps though. It's not 3 sets of 10 reps. We're doing 10 sets of 2 reps. And it's because each one of those reps needs to be incredibly fast, explosive, powerful, because that's what we're trying to generate. And so just keep that in mind as well. Like it's all about how that rep is performed. It has very little to do with your fatigue level or whether or not you feel the burn or like any of those kind of things. That's not what we're chasing when we're doing power speed development.
Yeah.
Cool. Got anything else?
Yeah, if like we went a lot into squat, mostly depth and stuff here. If you really wanted to hear more about that as well, we did an episode. It was episode 125 about, it was all about bar and feet position. So they looked at bar position, high and low back, and then wide and narrow stance squats, and they compared all four, intermingled them. And so episode 125, we dove into that. Quick highlights on that: narrower the stance and the higher the bar, it's much more on the quads, but the narrow stance had higher velocities but a little bit less glute work. So that's sort of what we talk about with this partial squat as well. Low bar, you're going to get more glute. It's going to be more forward lean, but so a little bit more on the low back and sometimes heavier loads. So yeah, if you wanted to dive more into that, we did go over that a while ago.
Awesome. Yeah, man, it's taking so long to learn all this stuff. Like, it's like by the
Some,
time
I mean,
by the time I have it
125
all like
was so long
mastered,
ago.
I'll be dead. I'm like, okay, here's how the human should train, and then I'll be too old for it to matter. I'll just have
This
to pass these.
almost 3 years ago was that one, and that was 125.
Yeah, just so much learning, and we're always in the trenches doing it. Before we sign up here, I want to ask you a question. Kind of switch
Ooh, at
topics
the
here.
end.
So if anybody wants to like head out, you can. We're pretty much done with the partial versus full range motion chat, but give Garmin some more highlight. Have you seen any of this Phoenix 8 chat?
I saw whispers in the bushes like a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was just like, no, why would they come out with an 8? What's the point of that? And like, I don't know what the difference would be, but and then other people were complaining like, oh no, here we go, they're going to be like Apple where they're releasing one all the time, and then the older models are going to get slow. And so that's what I was just like, if it happens, it happens. We'll see. But enlighten me.
I mean, all I've heard is, yeah, I heard the rumblings, but now it's like, I think pretty official that next month or September 2024, depending on when you're listening to this episode, the Phoenix 8 will be dropping within the first few weeks of September. So also, all what I've heard is it's got the newest heart rate monitor, and it's going to be an AMOLED screen. And so for me, I'm like, so it's the Epix Pro. Like,
I thought I heard about the Epics or two of their lines, one of their lines going. It might have been the Epics line going away, and then maybe that's just merging into the
it's like Phoenix
Phoenix,
8 is
because
just
that's the only difference is the screen,
yeah.
right?
I'm like,
So why would they?
so I
Yeah,
have the Phoenix 8 because I have the Epix Pro. So like I
yeah.
might have zero reason to switch. And to be honest, the next Garmin watch I get, I don't want it to be an AMOLED screen. I want it to be what do they call the other one? Like knit or
I don't
something.
know. So you're
Yeah.
already over the Epic screen.
Well, here's why I don't like it is because it glows at night. I just don't like
Hmm.
that. Uh,
Yeah, that's right. Because you have to change it to like
well, and
that
it'll
red
do it
thing,
on its
right?
own if like you set your bedtime. Like say you set your bedtime for 10 o'clock, like it'll
Hmm.
go into red shift mode at night, or the screen will turn completely off. Like there are settings for this, but I still don't like it glowing at night if I'm out. Like, and I also don't like the wrist gesture. Like I like the always on. So if I like always on, but I don't like a bright light, it's like then you don't like AMOLED, because what I should be doing is the wrist gesture, which I hate because what I found out with wrist gesture is I never look at my watch like that. I never shake I'm never like, yeah,
Yeah,
what time is it? I'm always like sitting here and I just glance over at my
yeah.
screen
It's
and I
just like a
look like,
turn.
yeah, like I never do enough for the gesture to work. And so I
Yeah,
have to have the always on screen. So anyway, I might be downgrading when they release. I'm like, which one of your models has the crappier screen with a new heart rate monitor? That's all I want. So I might be getting
yeah.
Phoenix 7 Pro or something like that. I'm
I
gonna downgrade for once.
I agree to all that. I do want one with the better heart rate on the wrist, because even the regular 7, isn't as good as some of their newer ones, and like they've always been a little bit behind on just the wrist heart rate. I want the forward facing flashlight. Mine is just the screen like gets really really bright, and that's it.
Oh yeah,
I want the forward facing flashlight because you can adjust that one. I use the flashlight all the time, and I would like the sapphire screen just to protect it, just to bang it around, because I'm always wearing it, and instead of having that film protecting. The solar is like whatever. Like I don't really care all that
yeah,
much because it's the battery life is already amazing. So it's whatever. I'd be interested to see what the 8 does. They I really really hope they don't go into this If any of the older models will start to lack any updates, or there's any hint of a subscription service, because then I will be OUT. Like,
Well, what do you think? I mean, Apple doesn't have that. They don't have like a.
they don't have it on the watch, but all the if you want any decent apps, each of the apps, like I
You're talking
doubt.
about like Whoop, how like Whoop is like Whoop is just a subscription model. Like it's you pay $15 a month forever and you can have a Whoop. That's like their
Yeah,
model.
like I don't exactly know what sort of fitness and like fitness, sleep, running, those sort of apps that are on Apple. That I'm sure they have built-in ones, but I'm also sure like there's better ones out there that you're going to have to pay for those apps to use.
Mm,
And like that was always a hang up. And what was one of the biggest issues when I had Apple Watch is that like, oh, I use this app for running, but it didn't work all that great. And in order for it to work better, you had to actually pay for it.
yeah. I'm
But
I'm
Garmin,
with you there.
everything's
Like,
built in.
well, like I said, I have an Epix Pro, which is a really good watch. Apparently, the Phoenix 8 is just going to be the Epix Pro. And so I probably won't upgrade the next time they have it. If anything, if I get a watch in the near future, I'll downgrade to like a Phoenix 7 Pro, which has they call it worse screen, has the not AMOLED screen and good battery life and new heart rate monitor. I think the newer one does. I'll see if they come out with anything else, but I'm the same way, man. Like if they went that direction, I love Garmin. I've used them a lot, but I mean, I've been on the fence about switching to just like an Ironman Timex for a while, or like a G-Shock, just something that's just like, what does it do? It tells time and can keep track of like a stopwatch. I don't need much else, to be honest. The only thing that'd be hard for me to get rid of at this point is the freaking flashlight. I've almost become like, it's almost like ingrained in me. Like it's like,
Yeah.
I use the flashlight so damn much on my Garmin. It's crazy.
Well, or I'd be like, well, let's go see what Polar has to offer. Let's see what
Yeah.
let's see what how this hype is about.
There-
If Garmin throws some BS at us.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, that's it for this one. Athletes, for everyone doing the training, I appreciate you. If you want to see some partial squats in the next cycle, they are coming. And thank you for sticking around and for being a part of the community. For anybody looking to get started with Garage Gym Athlete, you can go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a free trial, and we would love to have you. That's it for this one. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.